Good afternoon. I'm John Marino, Vice President Technology for the National Association of Broadcasters. Welcome to TV Involved, Successful Online Video Business Models. We continue to hear a lot these days about Internet TV. Here to facilitate a very thoughtful discussion about how broadcasters can capitalize on this is Will Richmond. Will is editor and publisher of VideoNuze, a widely followed online publication which provides daily industry analysis and news aggregation for broadband video decision makers. Will is also president and founder of Broadband Directions, a market intelligence, consulting, and industry events firm that specializes in broadband delivered video. Please join me in welcoming Will Richmond and our executive panel this afternoon. Will?
Great. Thanks very much, John, and welcome to everybody who's attending the Super Session today, and a special thanks to all of our panelists who are here with us today. Just to get us started, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, what role you have, and talk a little about the company that you work for. So, Barry, why don't you get started?
My name is Barry Blumberg. I work at Alloy Digital. We are a 21st century media company that produces and distributes content across the entertainment spectrum. Our focus is on owned and operated properties, brands like SMOSH or Clever or Girl or Teen or Crushable or Escapist. And the idea for us is to take those brands and develop content that lives in the digital space and then ports over into the traditional space or the more monetizable aspects of the digital space, like gaming or apps or merchandise.
Hi, I'm Eric Solomon. I'm with Nielsen, whom I'm guessing you're familiar with. And we like to think we're also a 21st century media company, media measurement company. I am responsible for our digital content measurement products as well as planning.
Frank Besteiro, AOL, I'm sure everybody knows who we are. We're no longer the compact discs in a steel case anymore. I oversee business development efforts for all of video, which is everything from content acquisition, distribution, production, technology, and other strategic deals.
My name is Gayle Gilman, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Digital Content for Original Productions. We just started this new division, I guess it's been less than a year. So we're a traditional television production company that's kind of moving into the digital age, like everybody else. And so I'm working now on that piece of our business.
Hi, I'm Rick Cordell. I run NBC Sports Digital. That includes NBC Sports, NBC Olympics, Golf Channel, the regional sports networks. Run all those businesses.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody, for introducing yourselves. You can see we have a mix of traditional media, digital side, digital originals, measurement. So should be the makings for a pretty interesting conversation. Let's start with the customer in mind, the viewer, always. Good place to start. We read a lot about the changes in viewer behaviors today, the proliferation of devices and so forth. Let's just start by understanding a little bit, if we can, maybe from a data standpoint. Eric, maybe you can lead us off here. How are viewers changing their behaviors these days? Is linear dead or not yet?
So linear is not dead, actually. In fact, consumers continue to consume linear television content at record rates. I think the difference is that there are, as we all know, many more means of consuming content than there ever were in the past. So today, consumers are still watching some 5 hours a day of television, whether it's live or time shifted. You can add to that online streamed. A portion of it is on game consoles. A portion is on DVD. The time-shifted portion is increasing. Live is about steady. But some of the behaviors that we're seeing, I think, are evolutions in the consumer products. So, for example, you have and Netflix just came out with House of Cards and released all the episodes at the same time, rather than doing a weekly or a linear time-based schedule. Which is sort of new modality of watching all the shows at the same time, which is something that I think if you go back to the VCR, started back with that technology. But now that we have DVR and now that we have Netflix and some of these other subscription and other services, it becomes easier to do that kind of thing, and to consume all of that content. So a lot of it is behaviors that are older that are just made more possible with some of the new technologies.
Mm-hmm. Rick, we were talking before we got started about the incredibly important role of sports in retaining live linear consumption. So maybe you can talk a little about what you're seeing from your viewers, both from a live perspective and also for catch-up afterwards.
Sure. I think the thing with sports, which is very different than entertainment programming, is that they want to see it live and they're willing to see it on a smaller screen. You can't will your team to victory or have your favorite player hit a home run on VOD. You want to see it live. So it's really growing the awareness. I think that overall live sports streaming was a novelty 2 or 3 years ago. We've been streaming NFL, Sunday Night Football since 2008. Each year it grows significantly. And now there's a general expectation of the consumer that sports programming is available somewhere. Watch ESPN, they've done a great job there. We're coming out very soon with NBC Sports Network streaming. It's really something that the consumer now thinks it's part of their overall consumption of sports.
And so maybe moving more into the realm of online content, Barry, Frank, Gayle, maybe you guys can talk a little bit. As I've followed the online market, it's tended to be mostly on-demand type viewing, although I think that's actually changing now as well, and we're seeing more live, certainly on sports side, also on music, live events and others. But maybe talk a little about what you're seeing among your viewers in consumption patterns, live versus on-demand. Barry, you want to start?
Well, I have a younger audience on most of the properties that we deal with. That's, in some cases 12 to 17, 12 to 24, but, really a younger audience. And I don't know what people watching television in record numbers means, but my audience doesn't really watch that much television. Sports and events aside, the audience that we serve on SMOSH or Clever, or even, with video products on Escapist or Girl and Teen, those are people who are consuming their audience largely online. Each month, the percentage of people who are consuming video content on mobile devices goes through the roof, to the point where there is no economic model that has successfully kept up with it. So, we, for example, we on a brand like SMOSH, where we did 70 or 80 million video views in the month of January, and that's probably up 15% over January in 2012. We see the revenues going down because more of that consumption is coming on mobile devices. And people are watching it when they want to watch it, with few exceptions. Some of our content on Clever is event-based. It capitalizes on what's trending out there, and people want to watch that immediately. We have some appointment viewing, but largely I think people are getting conditioned, at least on the younger end of the spectrum, to get what they want when they want to get it.
Is it a generational thing? I mean, you're catering to a younger audience, but do you think it's a generational thing, or do you think it's happening among older viewers as well?
Well, I think it's happening to some extent among older viewers, but I think the way I look at it is when I was growing up, there were 3 TV channels, and when cable came along, it was a novel thing, and anything above channel 13 was unusual and different. And the generation that came after me looked at that cable universe and viewed Nickelodeon and ABC in exactly the same way, and there was no differentiation. I watch how my son consumes content today, and whether he's watching WWE on television or watching something on his iPad or Xbox Live, he's not differentiating. It's just all content consumption to him.
Let's do a quick audience sample here. Raise your hand if you've watched any live TV in the last month outside of sports or news. So any live TV that you've watched in the last, still pretty heavy, I'd say. Yeah, I'd say at least 3/4.
I'm not sure I have.
I watched Ancient Aliens last night. Well, no, you said no sports. Oh, no. Then I watched Ancient Aliens after the Final Four. Oh.
Okay, great. So
I missed that, sorry.
outside sports.
You can't time shift Ancient Aliens. I mean, what if they found something. I would want to know, like,
What if
right
they
away,
land?
right?
Okay, Frank, how about your perspective?
I think from our perspective, we do about 1 billion streams a month in video views. The majority of that is in VOD. What we have found is we've come out with HuffPost Live recently, which has just been tremendous for us. It's our first kind of real foray into live events. I think traditionally AOL has always been, or our live events always been around, whether it's a concert that's being sponsored, it was really kind of justified by somebody coming in and sponsoring it for us to monetize. HuffPost Live, I think, has kind of changed the way we view live, and especially in the way it's actually incorporated the social media aspect of the web has just been tremendous for us, because the audience that are actually looking for it are consuming their content online, and being able to view it online, tweet about it, talk about it in real time, and then have the focus of that information shift to what they're talking about. You can't find that in a linear fashion. It just doesn't exist.
And back to Barry's point, is that a generational thing? Is that primarily younger audiences?
It
that are
is.
using HuffPo
It
Live?
is. It is traditionally a younger audience. I mean, we're not finding too many folks who are tuning in to watch nightly news are going to tune in to watch HuffPost Live. It's generational. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is completely generational, for at least from our perspective. Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is that we, even me at 50 years old, I get my content in a different way today. And aside from some of the television that I do watch, we are largely watching Facebook and Twitter and email alerts from things that we have opted into, where we're interested in knowing when a particular publication puts an article out or a particular video is released via YouTube subscription service. We're using these social communities to give us cues to watch things. And so that's one of the major shifts that I think has really taken place today, where up until a few years ago, all of our cues came from the media companies, right? It's time to watch this now, tune in now. Today, it's some dude I went to high school with who found an interesting video on YouTube that suggested on Facebook that his 812 friends watch it.
Well, I think there was always some social aspect to it, right? I think it's just that today's Facebook, et cetera, make it possible for that long-lost high school friend to actually recommend something to you, whereas you never would have come into contact with them before. And these huge Uber communities make that stuff available and provide those cues that weren't there in the past. It's similar to what I was saying before. The technologies that are there are sort of fanning the flames of behavior that were there, have always been there, but now you can really take advantage of it.
I was just going to say, yeah, for us, I mean, we're more, we're a traditional television production company, and we're watching, even though we're one of, I would say, the leading production companies in our space in terms of cable content, Deadliest Catch, Ice Road Truckers. I mean, we create hits and brands in the world that we operate in. We're still at the top of the game, and our numbers are a lot lower. So where is our audience? And they're moving online, and I can find all my fans, whether it's on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever. I can find all my cast members, all my shows, all the fans of my content there. So while the numbers are shrinking in this side of my business, and my fans are going over here, it kind of begs the question: what are you going to do if you're going to follow your audience, which is what this game is about.
And what are you going to do? That's part of what I think
That's
we're
the
here
next question.
to
That's
try
the next
to address. Right? Title of our session is TV Evolve, Successful Online Video Business Models. So, Gayle, what are you going to do to get those numbers back up?
Well, we're doing a few things. I mean, we, kind of decided that we needed to create, we need to be able to create content that wasn't just in hour-long and half-hour-long blocks. So we had to decide, maybe there's another way to skin that cat. So we've created a lot of short-form content, not only for the networks we work with, but also for our own digital verticals that we're just starting up. One of the things that we learned that was really interesting was, as I was talking about, is we found that we had a lot of fans, but we're not a consumer-facing brand. Nobody knows who we are. So one of the things that we set out to do is to create a consumer-facing brand. So we created something called Tom TV. That was based, the name just comes from our founder, Tom Beers, and he was kind of the creator of a lot of these big hits. But nobody knows that, we create all of these hit shows. They're all in separate kind of buckets. So we've kind of set out to talk directly to our audiences by creating a brand that we can interact with consumers directly.
Do they want to be talked to directly by you, or is that the new?
They do. We're finding that the interest is high, that that you can kind of bring them together by talking to them socially and marketing to them online, and that they, if they like this, then they're gonna like that, and we then now have a new group of people that we can launch content into. So one of the things that we really set out to is to create a brand of our own, so we can talk directly to our fans.
Do you run into conflict with your direct customers?
Well, it's new content. It's not the content that's on.
It's
yeah,
completely.
It's completely
okay.
new. Yeah.
So they view it as the networks that are buying programming from you. They view it as a way of essentially increasing awareness, increasing visibility,
yeah, I mean, we've
increasing
used
loyalty.
some of those. That's an awareness and a marketing, and then we create new original content from our kind of, now that we've created a brand and a face that people kind of understand.
Yeah. Okay.
I love ice road truckers.
Thank you.
Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thought that I spent all that time in Alaska?
Is he going to make it across the lake? I mean, you never know.
Well, you have to tune in. The season is about to start.
No.
Spoiler alert here. Okay, here we go. Barry, you were actually saying something interesting I thought before about, and Gayle, you're picking up about the role of social media as a way of kind of driving the conversation about driving awareness, driving visibility, and so forth. That seems like that's another essential ingredient now, whether you're an online original producer or you're a producer of TV content or live sports or news or weather or whatever. So let's just understand social. What's working in social in terms of driving consumption?
Well, I mean, for us, it's really different for each property and each program. I think we try to take a unique approach to launching a video on SMOSH, and that's different than how we might surface something that's going on Clever or Teen or Escapist, depending upon how those online communities exist and how they interact with one another. It's it's one of the new realities that you can't just put something up and hope that people will watch it, or hope that a traditional media spend is going to drive people to the product. Social has to be a component, and it is a component of every single thing that we do. I think that, and I think that one of the things that the YouTube Originals program revealed last year when they, financed 100 different channels was a lot of, very high level, very intelligent, very talented traditional producers came into the space and thought, if we make something really good, well, people are going to come and watch it. I think that they neglected the necessity of building a community up first, or at least as you go. The other thing that we do, which I think is really important, and it's very key with younger people, we treat each social platform, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, we treat them all differently, and each one is an entertainment platform unto itself. So, we don't sit on Twitter or Facebook and say, go watch this now. Click on this link now. A lot of the content that we put up on our social feeds are meant to be entertaining unto themselves. There's no economic benefit other than to help grow the community. So that's not like anything that's really come before.
One of the things, Barry, that you said that always interests me is just organizationally, how are companies that produce video now organized? What are some of the new functional roles when you talk about social media? Is there a social media manager for Twitter? Is there a social media manager by program that spans across different areas? Maybe you guys could all talk a little about, what is this function within a video company now, production company, that actually drives these communities and creates these conversations? Rick, if you want to get started.
I'll start first. I mean, social is part of everyone's job description now. It's not necessarily one or two people that are 22 years old in the room somewhere. It's really everyone needs to make sure they are thinking of social, thinking about how that content is shared, how it gets out there. I mean, the one thing going back to the previous question too is how does social help something out? I think it amplifies great content. If you have something that's great, people can tell other people about it and it gets out there. If you have bad content, it will dampen it if there's expectations that aren't met. So again, it's in everyone's DNA, and within NBC Sports, we're not just video, we have a news desk, so story breaks, we tweet it out, we make sure that we are having something original around that. I think we do a decent job on it, but I'm sure we can get better.
But Rick, let me ask you a follow-up question. Let's say you guys are covering an event,
Sure.
NHL game or whatever,
Yep.
and some incredible thing happens, and you guys have a 15-second video of that. How do you activate that online? Is there some person within the organization that's specifically tasked with looking for those kind of money clips and pushing them out there in some way? Or
So within
what happens?
NHL or other big events, yes, we have people that are basically on duty during the 3 hours of Sunday Night Football or during a weekend NHL hockey game. If it's a smaller event, I'm making this up, but Arkansas Derby this weekend, maybe there's not someone there for it, so we have to sort of just get the newsroom ready to go. But yeah, there's definitely advantages to this. When NASCAR had that fire on the track, it was the track dryer. People tuned into it when the other, I guess 2 weeks ago, USA Mexico had a World Cup qualifier in the blizzard, and people tuned into it because Twitter was tweeting about it.
Yeah, there was this great example during the Super Bowl. Remember when they had the blackout of
Yep.
Oreo, right, doing this
That's right.
special Twitter campaign, because they had essentially organized, apparently as it goes, this war room in New York with their agency lead and their brand managers and their social managers and so forth, basically waiting for opportunities to create some type of a social moment, and the blackout created that for them. And I just find it fascinating that that's organizationally now sort of where media is, that you've got to have that sort of inherent capability. Frank or Eric or Barry or Gayle, you want to talk about kind of how you organize as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Barry made a great point that you have to treat every platform has its own nuances. So because of that, every platform has to be treated a bit differently. Certainly social is a humongous aspect of everything we do, whether it be on the original side or on the live side, especially on the live side with HuffPost Live, because that's how they're actually focusing on what their news stories are. But from our perspective, I mean, it's a group effort. There's not one person who's in charge. The way we actually do it, though, is we have programmers who actually target the different platforms. So there's a programmer who just programs our YouTube stuff. There's programmers and folks who are actually tweeting out, different things that we want to highlight. But generally speaking,
programmer does not mean a software programmer
No, there's
developer.
actually
This is a programmer, editorial type producer
exactly.
person.
There's a human person, crazy in these days and times, but there's a human person actually looking at the content and getting it out there in as many outlets as possible. But of course, it is a group effort. So we're always, I think across AOL, it's kind of ingrained in you, right? If there's something we want to highlight, get it out there across the entire company. So even if it's on your own personal Twitter or own personal Facebook, get it out there, because social media is a huge aspect of what we do.
By the way, you said something that I think is one of the keys to what's missing in the digital space, which is programming. So the digital space largely just evolved in this amorphous way that nobody controlled and nobody thought about, and all of a sudden people come to it, whether you go to YouTube or you go online, and there are the social cues, but you don't know how to navigate, because nobody, up until a couple years ago or a year ago when people started talking about it, God, we really need to think about programming, that the television networks got that thing right, where some human being needed to think about, how people actually consume content and how content flows together. Because when I look at some platforms, it's very hard to figure out what I'm supposed to do when I get there. And, I don't think that algorithmic programming, is the best way to nurture your audience.
Now, I thought in sort of the on-demand era, the idea was that the viewer sort of takes control of curating or programming their own experiences, and programming is more of a conceit of the linear type of world that we come out of. But it sounds like you disagree, and I think, Frank, you're disagreeing also.
I think that sounds great in theory. But the fact of the matter is, and I think everybody in this room has experienced it, you go to YouTube to watch a video, and then the next video is a cat on a skateboard. It's like that has nothing to do with what I came here for.
But everybody likes cats on skateboards.
Of course, who doesn't? I love them too. I love them flushing toilets as well. It's just not what I want to see. So one of the things that the approach we actually took is everything we do around video, you don't want somebody to come to your platform, consume a single piece of video, and leave. So in order to keep them, you have to have relevance. So from our perspective, when we're programming this, we're taking a look at the video content, taking a look at the page or the article that's embedded around it, and then programming to get people to interact with more video. And that's just been a tremendous successful strategy
Yeah,
for us.
and I think that's part of the dynamic with social as well, is that's another one of those programming cues. It can be very overwhelming to try and navigate the channels and the fragmented amount of incredibly great content, by the way, that is out there these days. And you need to find whether it's great programming on AOL On, or if it's your friends telling you what to do. I mean, we actually did some research with Twitter I think about a month ago, we released a report that showed a correlation between Twitter activity and TV ratings. We actually looked at the fall TV ratings for entertainment programming and found a correlation, which, by the way, does not necessarily mean causation, but a correlation between Twitter activity and ratings, where, and I'm going to try and get the numbers right, and in the age, I want to say 18 to 34 demo, an 8.5% increase in Twitter volume correlated with a 1% increase in ratings. And it was actually about a 14% increase in Twitter volume for the 35 to 49 demo. So younger people more likely to take those cues, is what it seemed. But in the older demos, they are also looking at Twitter as a source of potentially finding what to go and watch. So that's something that we're continuing to keep an eye on at Nielsen, because it's obviously very important.
Did that break for certain types of programs or certain genres of programming?
We didn't take it down to a low level at this point, but we'll be looking at that going forward.
Gayle, you got to come.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you, Barry. I think that the clutter is overwhelming. You go to some of these platforms, be it Yahoo and MSN or, whatever, and the bigger platforms, when you go to that first page, you're trying to think, oh, where's the video content I was looking for? Oh, they launched Yahoo Screen, or they launched, you know what I mean? There's different places. But to get there, it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's not easy. And maybe there's a split generationally there. It's easier. Maybe that's me or whatever, but I feel like without some kind of social media, you're never going to find a lot of that content, because you can't navigate to it yourself. I mean, it's very hard. When you go to a platform like Hulu, it's much more simpler. You go to the kind of real distribution platforms or longer form like Netflix. I find it's much easier to find what you're looking for, to say that. So there's just one other interesting anecdote I thought I'd say is that, yes, in the digital business, of course, we're relying on social, but on our TV side of the business, we recently had an experience, which I'm sure many people are having now, where we did a new series, and or it was a pilot, and a broadcast pilot, and the number came back, and it aired, and it was good. It wasn't through the roof, but it was more than decent. And so there was the conversation about, will there be a pickup when we do it? And somebody then said, well, it just didn't have any social chatter. And that was it. And it was dead.
Because it didn't have social chatter, or?
Because it didn't have social chatter. Nobody was talking about it. And there had been no social media effort by the network either. By the way, they had put, not any kind of effort or, marketing money behind that, but neither had we. And that was a lesson that we took to heart, that we're not going to kind of sit and wait for the networks to do that kind of promotion anymore, or to kind of go out there, because they hadn't done very much to support it. But the reason they were giving us was that they weren't going to pick it up, was that there wasn't any social chat.
Another reason why, as you said before, an original producer has to sort of take responsibility themselves for direct-to-consumer type of branding. Yeah.
And so that's one of the ways I think our digital business will help and dovetail with our kind of TV business.
Yeah. Beyond social media, it seems to me that the role of the guide has evolved, is very different today. It's also much more socially infused. But there are a lot of different efforts at sort of next generation guide type products these days. Maybe you guys could talk a little bit about what guide products, online guide products, mobile, have, or tablet-based, have broken through at this point, if any benefits you're seeing at this point. Don't all jump in at once. You haven't seen any. Nothing yet, truthfully?
We just, the only guides that we use are, sort of conditioning our audience to understand, when we do certain things.
Your own on-site guides, you're saying?
Well, on-site guides, but also just the regularity and frequency with which we do things. 7 years ago, these two 17-year-old kids in Sacramento made a funny video on YouTube, and I saw it, and we became partners in 2006. And one of the first things I said to him was, we have to make a video every Friday, and it should come out at 1 o'clock. That was the time that you were most likely to have the largest YouTube audience, and it could spin into that positive feedback loop of most viewed video of the day back in the day, and so we agreed that Friday at 1 o'clock is when we would release a funny video on YouTube. It's 7 years later. We haven't missed a Friday in 7 years, and that's, our audience knows, because if we're 15 minutes late, we hear it from tens of thousands of people. Now, I don't know if that is, what percentage of the success that SMOSH has had is attributable to some of the traditional models that we overlaid on what it is that they're doing. But I can tell you, and I would say this to them, the content we make isn't that great. It's not that great. But we treat our audience with respect, and we treat our audience the way that television treats its audience, or that, somebody who's selling a DVD treats its audience, where you know what you're going to get, and it lives up to the expectations. And they have almost 9 million subscribers on YouTube, and these two guys do 80 to 100 million video views a month across their channels. So it's crazy, but it also, there's a lot of reliance on traditional simplistic ideas of regular schedule, good quality content, or the same quality of content coming out at all times, continuing to push the creative forward. If season 1 of Ice Road Truckers was season 2 was the same as season 1, nobody would watch. So, you push it forward, you up the drama, get some more lady drivers on the show, right?
Exactly.
So,
Lisa's back this year, by the way, for you.
So, the brands have to continue to evolve and have to continue to raise the level of their artistry. But, a lot of what is, true in traditional television is true in the digital space, and it was true in, radio, and it was true in print publishing, and it was probably true in literature and cave drawings a long time ago.
So picking up on that point, Barry, is it mediocre content but delivered on a regular basis beats?
It's not mediocre content.
No,
it's content, and when I say it's not that good, it's not. There's more sophisticated humor out there. There's more highly produced, flashier content that's out there. It's the best content in the digital space, bar none, on video, for connecting with an audience, because which any successful television show, any successful product that's out there is all about the connection that you make with an audience. These two guys connect with 12 to 24-year-old, 60% male, 40% female. They connect with them, and I think part of it is, not to overanalyze it, but part of it is that what they do is, it's just out of reach of what you and everybody who watches YouTube on some level aspires to being a video producer, says, I could do that, or I should have a channel. And so it's just out of reach. The writing's just a little better than you would do on your own. The production quality is just a little better. And so, it is this great connection.
But where I was heading with, and that's totally understood, where I was heading with the question is, does that trump really superb content that isn't released necessarily on an understandable schedule? That's where I was trying to sort of draw a distinction, is better to do something that may not be the absolute paramount, but audiences know it's coming, as you said, every Friday, or better to do that. Like, I was intrigued recently, and Frank, maybe you've got an opinion on this, although it's kind of a competitor of yours, but Yahoo did this series last year with Tom Hanks, right? Huge star. I'm not sure that I saw a whole lot of gee whiz metrics that came out of that.
But
and
it did win a Streamy Award, beating out one of our animated series. So,
but from an audience standpoint, I don't know that it. What's your?
I mean, I think scale matters, but I think the one thing that we still see that's very similar to television is content is still king, right? If the content is compelling and you market it the right way and you put it on the right platforms, you're going to get viewers. If the content is, it's got a big name attached to it, people might tune in, but if it's not great, they're not going to keep coming back for it. So I think at the end of the day, there's all these great technologies, and we can apply all these great metrics, and we can do all these great things. But literally, it all comes down to, if the content is just okay, you're probably not going to get the reach that you want. Whereas if the content is great, yeah, people are going to keep coming back. So it just, there it is again. Content is still king.
And I don't think it's a black and white thing. I mean, for us, we employ some scheduling. There's a website called Funny or Die. I'm not sure when content comes out on that site, but sometimes the content that comes out on that site is really good, and everybody is sharing that content, and everybody goes to watch it. So, that's a completely different, side of the coin, but also successful.
So we've talked a lot about audiences, behavior, content. Can't have a business model panel without talking about monetization, right? Because all the audience and content in the world is great until you monetize. So in video, there has been a real predominance, I think, of pre-roll and more recently mid-roll, post-roll type ads as well. So is that sort of TV-ish model here to stay, or are we going to see other types of monetization in video as well? Anybody want to take it? Rick?
I'll start. So I'm probably closest to the TV model right now. I mean, the benefit that we have digitally is the fact that the demographics that stream live content, live NFL, are younger, more technically savvy, skew a bit male, are affluent, and they demand a higher CPM, quite frankly, than probably anywhere else on the web. So we're actually monetizing them at really high volumes. And the amount of content you have, and again, there's a lot of premium VOD content out there, Hulu, YouTube, what Barry's producing, what AOL and Yahoo's producing. But live sports, there's only a few guys that have it. So you're actually able to drive that number up there, and it becomes a very big anchor for the rest of what we do for NBCSports.com. So the model there works fantastically. And then from an ad load standpoint, it's not dictated by us saying, hey, well, I think a 15-second commercial makes sense during the first pod. The ref blew the whistle. They're not coming back for 2.5 minutes. Whether it's us or not, it's really not. It's the NFL. So we serve a 2.5-minute pod of maybe 15-second commercials during there. So now you have pre-roll, you have mid-roll, you have adjacent banner ads. We then add star cam, so you can fly around Peyton Manning the whole entire game. We have the cable cam that's hot during the entire game. So we had 4 alternate camera angles. We bolt on social features. We bolt on VOD, so first quarter highlights and everything else. All that is sponsorable. So now you take just a straight linear feed, which before was monetized through TV on simply mid-rolls, and you add all these other elements to it, and you got a real business.
Just talking about the mid-rolls for a second, the ads that run, as you said, during a timeout, TV timeout, whatever. Are you guys selling those for a higher effective CPM than you do on the TV side, or is that basically the same type of deal?
We sell them separately than TV, and in some cases higher.
And in the cases...
Can I just say that you guys, you have the one thing going that nobody else does online, which is scarcity.
Right.
And it's the thing that's affected all of our businesses negatively, except yours, because you have scarcity. There's only so much live football that you can consume online, and advertisers are willing to pay a premium for that. There's a lot of funny video online that serves 12 to 24-year-olds, and there's the CPMs are. I don't even want to say how crazily low they can be sometimes relative to what traditional media can get. So, I think that
And you're asserting that's because of a supply and
There's no
demand.
scarcity. There's so much inventory out there. I mean, you talk about 1 billion views a month. There are multi-channel networks on YouTube that are boasting 2.5 billion views a month. Nobody buys that much, So who cares at the end of the day? What we've done a poor job of as an industry in the digital space is of educating Madison Avenue as to where their dollars should be spent and where they shouldn't be spent. But since everything's for sale, they spread it out in a very inefficient and inexpensive way.
Right. I mean, you talk about the Olympics, you talk about really premier. I mean, we came out public with this. We made $60 million in 17 days in video.
Sorry, say that again, Rick.
$60 million in 17 days during the Summer Olympics last summer.
How much of that came from YouTube?
In terms of what? In terms of distribution?
Your volume and your revenues.
I shouldn't go into that.
50%, 50%,
I can't. I wouldn't even want to. I'll talk to you offline.
But here's another question, Rick. You were talking about surrounding the stream with companion ads and also multiple camera angles, which effectively multiply the number of streams that now can be monetized and so forth. Can you give us any sort of reference point on the same exact, let's say, hour of video that gets X on linear, monetized at X on linear? Is it monetized at a multiple of X online? Is it like 2X, 3X?
It really depends on the event. It depends on the scarcity. It depends. I mean, if you're talking Olympics, we do pretty well with the Olympics. Talking about NFL, absolutely do really well. If it's a smaller event that's sort of making it a weekend Allied Do tour stop, probably not.
Are you finding that holds true for mobile as the same as it does for
so
desktop?
Mobile's harder. I mean, look, there's less real estate there. Video CPMs we're trying to sell that fluid across multiple platforms. But, the star cams, it's harder to sort of get people engaged with that. We're able to do picture-in-picture on the web. We're not able to do that on the mobile side. And even the iPad, the same thing. You don't have the same adjacent banner ads that you have on the web. So that's a whole destruction of value as you get to the smaller screen.
So just, again, on monetization, Eric, you guys have launched a product called OCR, Online Campaign Ratings. Not everyone's going to be familiar with that. So talk a little about online campaign ratings and also how it fits into, I think, the point Barry was raising about increasing the value of online ad inventory.
Sure. So Nielsen launched this product that we call campaign ratings or online campaign ratings about 18 months ago or so, maybe close to 2 years ago. And what it is a way to measure the delivery of ad campaigns on digital platforms. And what we do is we actually have a partnership with Facebook. And we work with our advertiser and agency clients to tag their ad campaigns. When those ad campaigns load in a browser, we fire a tag, and we record the impression, but we also hit Facebook. And Facebook, over the course of a day, will accumulate all of those pings and send us back an overnight aggregated file that tells us the age and gender of the people who saw those ads. We take that data, we calibrate it with data that we have from our nationally representative panel, and we produce an overnight rating for the ad campaign that says who saw the ad by age and gender, expressed as a gross rating point. So the reason we launched the product to begin with is that to some extent, we perceived just a basic measurement problem that was preventing particularly brand advertising from coming over to the digital space. Brand advertisers are very used to buying television. They're comfortable with it. They know how to do it. They know what a GRP is and what that buys them in terms of audience and what that means in terms of return. But that metric didn't exist in the online world. So we came up with this product. We've launched it. We're now running something where we get something like 1 billion pings a day. And there's still much more that.
And something like 70% of campaigns are now using OCR also, right?
I don't think it's that high, but we do have between. So ComScore also has a product that does something similar in a slightly different way. I think the larger point is that more and more campaigns, particularly brand advertising campaigns, are being measured as a gross rating point through Nielsen or other means, and that is helping brand advertisers move their dollars from other media, whether it's linear television or some of the other magazines, print, et cetera, to digital. And so our hope is that better measurement will equal more dollars available for the digital platforms.
And Frank, do you guys, you're nodding like
Yeah,
you're using OCR in your campaigns?
Yeah, we're very big fans of it. And listen, I think I've always said that linear's kind of the cannon shot, and digital's the sniper shot, right? And I think everybody agrees with that. The problem is it's never translated into actual shift in thinking. And it's because of the way that buyers interact and how they actually get their information and their data. And I think before OCR, they were thinking of digital like, yeah, that's that digital thing, we'll get to it eventually. Whereas now this kind of starts disrupting that thinking, and it starts the shift. So as the two kind of meld, I think that's when you're going to start seeing the real shift from the linear ad spend to the digital ad spend. Because I just think that, like it was stated, that TV buyers don't have that education yet. They're not there yet. But with the new data points that are coming out, they should probably get there a lot quicker.
It's still relatively early days, and in fact, the entire online video ad industry is $3-4 billion, give or take, who you want to believe, whereas the TV ad business is still $60 billion or $70 billion per year.
Exactly, and we think that OCR and other products like that will help shift that and start bringing the real dollars into digital.
Yeah, although I do hear that dollars coming into the online video ad space is less about TV ad dollars coming over than about print or newspaper, radio, and so forth, and that a lot of savvy brand advertisers now see the sort of complementary nature between online video that may have been augmented from something on TV or rebroadcast on TV.
And even brand advertisers are starting to copy the behaviors that we've seen on linear online, right? So now we're getting approached by brand advertisers saying, we know you're making investment in production, we actually want to give you some money to invest in that with you. It's not around product placement, it has nothing to do with it, they just want to be a partner in production, right? They basically want to buy time. So these are behaviors that are starting to shift, and hopefully now with the new data points that are coming out there, it'll be a much more aggressive shift.
Yeah, Rick, Barry, what are you guys seeing on, and Gayle also, to the extent you have insights, do you see that those dollars in online video are coming from the TV side? Are they coming from other buckets that are kind of getting depleted these days?
I think a little bit. I mean, for me, I think of a little bit of both. Certainly the NBC broadcast content, we're hip on the of the TV guys selling, so that's an easier sell for us. I think on the Golf Channel side, where you see the golf magazine industry have some struggles, they've gone from $400 million top line revenue in ad sales down to $300 million in the last 5 years. So $100 million went somewhere. Where'd it go? I think some of it's showing up in digital, some of it's showing up on TV, but that continues to sort of go down. I hope and expect some of that to fall into golfchannel.com in general.
Barry, how about you guys?
I think we're seeing ad agencies and brands figuring it out. So, we'll get dollars out of marketing agencies, we'll get dollars from, TV budgets, we'll get dollars from, special projects. So it's not really, and then the digital agencies, of course, are the lion's share of the dollars. But, it's still not really figured out. And, it depends on the campaign. And as you have more and more success in, individual areas of a brand, the brand becomes more attracted to you, and hopefully that brings repeat business, and it brings repeat business in a repeatable way, meaning it's coming through an agency and a relationship that is ongoing. One of the hardest things is that a lot of these brands you find have 15 different ad agencies that are in the picture, and each one is certainly a little proprietary about their aspect of the business and wants to keep the media dollars flowing through them, and so the shifts are harder, but they're coming.
Yeah, and the other thing we see is that the agencies, you still have a split between traditional media and digital. And so the campaign ratings product I was talking about, we actually offer a cross-platform campaign rating that includes the TV commercials as well as the digitally served commercials in one report, deduplicated. But even then, you have this issue where the budget is either with the traditional media part of the agency or the digital media part of the agency sometimes, and so they're sort of fighting each other rather than maximizing across. More often now we're seeing our clients trying to maximize across the two. That may be one of the reasons that the dollars aren't flowing out of TV, is that a lot of our clients, the big media companies, are leveraging this measurement to keep the budgets in television and in video and take it away from things like print and outdoor.
To some degree. I think also that on the agency and the brand side, as you see, senior management get younger and younger inside of these places, you'll see more risk-taking and greater understanding of the business. In the first 5 years that I spent in the digital space, I think that there was great trepidation about spending money anywhere other than where it was going to deliver the expected results. So if I buy so many GRPs, I'm going to increase the sales in the QSR by 0.01%. And that's what I'm going to do, because that's how I keep my job, and that's how I get promoted, and that's how our sales grow. It's changing, just slowly, not as fast as the digital space is changing.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, we're finding that we're monetizing our content in, kind of multiple ways. We have about 500 hours of off-network programming in our catalog that we own, and we are distributing that across iTunes, Xbox, PlayStation, Amazon. So that's monetizing, in that area. We are getting money from the digital agencies to create branded content. Some of that business comes through our agent, and some of it comes directly from digital agencies that we've now been introducing ourselves to. And then we're also, it's even interesting on the platforms. We have a platform, we've done a deal with a platform for content. It's like an overall, I'll give you this much money, you give me this many hours. So it's kind of a content. And then I have another platform I'm working with that did a minimum ad guarantee against content creation, a number of hours. So it seems like every deal, every kind of deal that you can do to make money is being done. And that's part of what I think is fun. It's like you get to deal and window in all these new ways with all the stuff that you make. So that's been a lot of fun. It's interesting. It's fun when it works. But yeah.
We've got about 20 minutes left, so let me invite audience members that want to ask a question. There is a mic over here and a mic over here. Please approach, and let's make this interactive. So any questions from the audience? Looks like get someone approaching here. Yes.
Hello, my name's Andrew Donahoe with Airstone Media. We make second screen apps. And there's a big debate going on whether second screen apps should be done by networks or by individual shows. And with the advent of time shifting, the relationship with the client, or with the viewer, has moved out over time. And I've always said that means you need to have a direct relationship all the time between the show and the viewer. Network people think differently. We've got network people, we've got individual developers, or individual showrunners up here. I'd like to know your opinion on which way people like me should be going.
I think whoever is selling the show should be in charge of the second screen app.
Other thoughts?
So from our perspective, it kind of ties into that social media aspect a bit, right? So he does have a point. I mean, when I scratch that, I agree. Whoever's selling it should be controlling it.
Sounds so reluctant.
I'll add on that. I mean, the thing about it is who has the rights to the show. In sports, is who has rights to the first quarter highlights, who has rights to the talent that you see during the halftime show, and that typically is the content provider, NBC in that case. And so I think we can give a richer experience than what you maybe see out there for digital-only guys. I think you're coming from a different angle anyway, but that's at least from a sports perspective.
Well, I would see sports as a separate show actually inside the bigger network, because it's such an event-oriented thing.
I agree with you then.
Okay.
Okay, next question here.
Hi, I'm Jim Long. I'm a cameraman with NBC News. Rick, I'm happy to see part of the family here. There are a lot of challenges peculiar to online video. The more successful you become, you strain your CDNs, and you have to pay more for that. If you're an independent producer, how do you suggest to independent producers going about creating new content that'll be successful? Do you have to take advertisers along the way and help them understand the value of what you're creating? Are there better kinds of content that are going to be more successful? And what do you think about revenue streams like in-program sponsorship with redemption codes and things like that, a la Revision 3 and Leah Laporte and those folks? A lot of questions into one. Sorry.
A lot of questions, but certainly you guys, Barry and Frank, have been on this, right?
I mean, we've we have a massive syndication distribution arm in which a lot of independent producers are actually part of that. So the way we actually evaluate those is, again, back to the content is king standpoint. If it's good content, we're always willing to have the conversation. But at the end of the day, if our programmers and our content folks feel we can't drive video views or monetize it well, it's probably not going to get distribution. But there's massive syndication arms out there. There's platforms like YouTube out there that have massive scale. I think those are great opportunities for independent producers to get eyeballs that they traditionally would be barred from.
And I think it really depends on what you're trying to produce and what you're trying to accomplish. You know, we didn't really think about advertisers in the beginning. We just thought about making good content, and that's because we didn't spend very much money, you know, doing what it is that we were doing. We didn't take a lot of risk. We don't take a lot of risk. You know, a brand of ours like Clever makes 50 to 70 videos a day. When I was in the television business, we used to talk about television as being the disposable, you know, media. Well, this is really the disposable media, because we make a video on Clever and we put it out there and we tell the latest, you know, news with whatever's going on with Justin Bieber, and if it's good, it's good, and lots of people watch it, and if it's not, they don't, and it didn't cost us very much money, and we're on to the next thing. So, you know, if you're just starting out and you want to be an online content producer, don't spend very much money and don't be afraid to fail, you know, and learn from your mistakes and read the comments and read the social feeds about what people are saying about what it is that you're doing, and, you know, learn from it and on to the next episode.
And release it on a schedule.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Great. Well, let's just look forward a little bit. You know, I'm curious to ask you guys about, when you think of all the different changes that are happening in the market these days, you know, what are one or two things that you think are really going to sort of affect the shape of TV business models, online video business models as we go forward over the next couple of years? Rick, you look like you're dying.
First and foremost, TV everywhere. It's probably the best value that people have they don't know about. I mean, there is so much content available to you on a VOD basis, on a live basis, and more is coming each and every day. And it's amazing the amount of sort of blowback you get if you ask someone to log in. You log into Netflix, you log into YouTube, you log into your email every day. It seems to be no problem for people. You ask them to log into their cable account, it's like, greedy cable bastards. You know, it's unbelievable. But I think the general awareness of that coming out there, and then the ease of use. Granted, there are things that cable can do to make it easier on the consumer, so they're aware of their passwords, they're aware of their account numbers. But I think that's probably the big change that will happen, in that your cable subscription will now have additional value to you as you commute and go about your every day.
And one of the things that's changing actually with TV everywhere is that content providers themselves are kind of establishing these direct relationships. So, you know, competitor of yours, ESPN, has this Watch ESPN app. You have to know your cable credentials initially in order to be authenticated. But once you're done with that first time, right, then you're passing right through, and then you're able to interact essentially with the content brand. So that sounds like a trend also.
We've gone beyond that too. So during the London Olympics, if you were a Comcast home or a Cablevision home, if you were in your house, we knew who you were based on your IP address. We cross-referenced it with your cable account, and you went right in, no problems whatsoever. So I think you need more innovation like that to sort of drive the point home.
So TV everywhere, clearly a very strategic priority in the pay TV industry, both for content providers and also for the operators. Yep. Other key trends that are coming in the next couple of years?
Well, I think one thing that is interesting is the marathoning of shows, and the
what of shows?
Marathoning. So like the House of Cards release, and there are channels out there. So I think what is interesting is the ability to take video on demand type content or non-live content, even reruns, and package them up into something that can be a shared experience. That can get people around the screen at the same time, and talking about it on social media, and bringing more awareness to it, and driving some new ad revenue that way. So the client escapes me. One of our clients is doing that with a show. During their off season of producing new episodes, they're marathoning the previous season, and they're turning it into an event. So they're putting social and paid media behind it to try and drive awareness, and then trying to get people to come together and have this shared the shared experience.
Yeah, I thought you were actually going in a different direction, or maybe you're talking about the same thing but using different terminology. The concept of binge viewing, where people consume, is it's a similar type of thing?
Yeah, so it's sort of taking advantage of the fact that people will go and binge view something and using that as a launch pad for driving new audience and driving new ad revenue.
Okay, great. Frank, how about talk about original online productions, right?
Yeah, you know, I think TV everywhere and OTT and mobile and tablets and all this, the way we consume content today presents an opportunity and an issue in certain cases. We've been very successful on short form. Now we have the opportunity to branch out into things like long form with the advent of OTT, which actually does really well for us from an app perspective. Being on smart TVs, being on mobile, being in traditional places where people are used to consuming long form is a great opportunity for us. It's a challenge because now we need to produce the right content to get consumption and monetize that. So I think that's going to be a humongous opportunity, and I think it's going to continue to grow for us. I also think data is going to play a very big role in the shift, especially in the upcoming year. I think how buyers are actually educated and how they're actually getting their information is really going to help aggressively, again, move those ad dollars to online. And I think this is going to be a key year for it.
In fact, there's been a lot written about how Netflix used data, all the data that it's sitting on about its viewers, to help it essentially develop the concept for House of Cards. I think they're doing that for some of the other shows that they're launching now as well. Is that something you guys are also kind of trying to mine that user data, try and find patterns of original programming?
I mean, look, we're not going to put a show on gardening on Xbox. It's just not going to make sense. You're not going to get any views,
unless
right?
it's a Minecraft garden.
Yeah, exactly, unless you're building it in Minecraft. But I think, you know, understanding your audience is really key to this whole thing. So when we look at the platforms, we need to produce the right content and market and shift the exposure to get the eyeballs there on those platforms.
So is this is the intersection of quote-unquote big data with TV programming, right? The idea that you can sort of be savvier than ever about what show might work rather than sort of shooting the odds with pilot seasons and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think for too long, you know, on the digital side, we've had access to all this information, but nobody really knew what to do with it. So I think now that people are actually getting smarter about how they're actually applying the data is going to be a really big thing for us.
Okay, great. Gayle, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say that it's, as I mentioned before, it's really brand building for us and entering into that conversation with our audience directly, engaging them. You know, on the TV side, when our TV shows go off the air, no one's talking to them, and that's an opportunity for us to keep them engaged, keep programming to them, you know, keep that conversation growing. So, and that's all part of our brand building strategy. So I think that's what's, you know, kind of key to our own business and growing it in the digital space.
Sounds like if you're a producer of video content, you need to be very focused on not just producing great content, but also building your brand, building your audiences, and so forth. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's what we feel. I mean, making great content, as we've said here, is always the most important thing. And it is, you go back to the same elements. Great content is always going to, you know, rise to the top, but you have to find a way to get it to the right people, because great pilots, when nobody watches, are not going to get renewed. The same thing's going to happen in the digital space. So the thing that's great about digital for us is that there's no, you know, not often a middleman anymore. So we have to be able to kind of take charge of that ourselves.
Yeah. Eric, one big trend? Or did we get your trend already? Yeah. I'm sorry, I was looking at Barry. My mistake.
You know, I think that what we're seeing right now is that, you know, in this world of democratization of content and distribution, I think it's huge that anybody can do it, but not everybody can do it, you know, and I think that there's a lot of filtering going on in the wild west of the digital space where, you know, people are surfacing and starting companies and starting to create content, and, you know, they're on somewhat equal footing with everybody else that's out there, but it has to be good, you know, and it has to be, you know, it has to have a good business model, and it has to be, you know, distributed and surfaced in the right way, and so, you know, like I think I mentioned earlier, so much of traditional over, you know, hundreds of years of media, you know, still applies. But anybody can walk in the front door right now, and I think that it's a great thing. I liken it to the music business. You know, a lot of people think the music business is, you know, over or different, or, you know, it doesn't serve as many, you know, big companies as it used to. But what really happened is at least for me as a consumer of music, I actually get to find artists that I really connect with, and they may not sell 1 million records, they may sell 10,000, but that's enough for them to make a living and for them to keep on, you know, applying their trade and to, you know, actually have a good communication experience with the members of their audience. And that's what's happening in the online video space, whether it's, you know, SMOSH or Clever or NBC Sports. You know, it's giving people what they want and giving them a good experience, and that's what's going to be successful.
So one of the things that none of you guys mentioned was mobile, and I've been hearing throughout the industry.
I don't think any of us want to talk about mobile.
I hear like 30, 40, 50% of views now coming via mobile.
More, the younger you get, the more it is. If I told you how many people watched our programming on iPod Touches,
So why don't you want to talk about mobile?
Well, I think that you know, more and more people consume on mobile devices, and there's you know, the money is not there. So you know, we have always been incredibly leery of pushing our audience towards a better mobile experience, because it took people away from the, you know, desktop experience where we were monetizing at a decent level, you know. So it's hard.
And I will tell you, from a measurement perspective, it's very hard to measure mobile.
Why is that?
For a number of reasons, one of which is the fragmentation, right? So the audiences are, while they're growing, are still smaller. So, you know, in a traditional panel, it's very, very hard. Having stuff tagged up is also difficult. And then particularly the Apple operating system is very difficult for us to put an electronic measurement method onto. We have it, but it's not as sophisticated as what we can do on a computer, simply because of the lack of multitasking and what Apple will and won't allow with the operating system. So it's just there's a combination of things there that make it very, very difficult to capture and include in our metrics. And so we're tracking it, we're going to resolve it, but it's not coming along as quickly as the audience is coming along.
Yeah. How about other thoughts on mobile?
I mean, from a live streaming perspective, we're selling fluidity around the CPM between mobile and tablet, so we're fine from that perspective. But we lose the bolted-on elements that we sell, so the star cams are harder to find, and social's a bit harder to find. I think the other thing with mobile, that people basically have a few apps they seek out that are sort of icons on their screen. I think there's less, I don't say less sharing, but there's less sort of just getting lost in an experience in the mobile side. I think I find myself on YouTube clicking around to 5 different things. On the mobile side, mostly it's through Twitter. I go to one video, I see it, and close Twitter. I'm back on Twitter looking through. So that same sort of just getting me to churn isn't there.
So not a programmed experience, you're saying, going back to our scheduling and programming.
Right.
I mean, in a way, you just touched on something that I think is true. Your mobile device is actually a very isolating device, right? When you're consuming something on your mobile device, there aren't a lot of threads and you know, streams that you're following and sort of flowing through the way that you do when you switch channels on a television set, or when you go to Huffington Post and you click from one thing to the next to the next. So it's almost a bit of a dead-end street when you consume a piece of content.
Difference between apps and the web, in a sense, right? Yeah. Well, we've covered a ton of ground today. Hopefully, we've imparted some wisdom for the audience. So please join me in thanking our panelists today.